So tonight I'm making vegan pasta, which I have been asked multiple times to do a video on because everyone that I make it for seems to really love it. And typically they're people who aren't vegan, so this is the video. However, disclaimer, I normally use the Jovial gluten-free lasagna noodles that are cassava, and tonight I'm using barilla instead. And the reason is because I had a client who gave them to me. So it's what I happen to have on hand. So we're going to try these instead. However, both brands say you don't have to parboil them. You can just put them directly in the oven. What I have found when I have made any of these before is that that's not really true. I guess you can, but the texture isn't great. So I have found that parboiling them for about 3 minutes before I put them in helps it bake faster and it helps have a better consistency. But that's just me. So while I'm waiting on the water to boil, what I've got is, besides noodles, I've got pasta sauce. You can use any pasta sauce you want. You can make your own. I'm not going to make my own, not at this point in time. I usually try and find an organic one that doesn't have sugar added, which is difficult to do sometimes. But this one is basil and garlic and oregano and all the good stuff, and big chunks of tomatoes. So I'm going to start by putting that on the bottom of the lovely pan here, because that is what you start with, a layer of tomato sauce on the bottom, because you want to make sure that when you put the noodles down there, they've got something to soak up. Otherwise they are definitely going to be very crunchy, and that is not what you want. I want to tell you what else I'm putting in the lasagna, which, you know, this is a kind of free-for-all. You do what flavor profile you like. I can tell you when the kids aren't around, I have a tendency to put mushrooms in it because I love mushrooms, and cauliflower. They don't seem to like either, so I'm not doing that. However, I did pan fry up a bunch of fresh zucchini that I cut up and some frozen vegetables. So that's an easy hack. A lot of times I'll even microwave the frozen vegetables if I'm not doing zucchini. So this is carrots, peas, corn, and green beans with the zucchini. And then what I put in it was the Trader Joe's Green Goddess seasoning blend and a little bit of olive oil. So if we're talking about trying to get more fiber and more plants in our life, the current recommendation is to try and get at least 30 different plants a week. That's a bare minimum. I aim for way more than that, but that's a stretch for a lot of people. So I can tell you that the vegetables with the spices, because spices count, are 16 different plants. And then I am using some fake faux beefy crumbles. I'm using the Gardein brand. I like this one. I don't use it a whole lot, but the kids really like it when I put it in lasagna. So this is not a whole foods plant-based. This is just plant-based. So I'm using the Kite Hill ricotta, which is almond. So if you have an almond allergy, don't use this. But this one is the best one I found that is plant-based, that's vegan. And then I add 1 egg, which in this case is 3 tablespoons of this to it, and stir it up in a bowl. And that's it. The other things that I'm going to add are the Diet Italian blend shreds. That's the main cheese. And then for the very top, I usually top it with a little bit of the mozzarella and the Follow Your Heart Parmesan. So when we add up all of the plants for the whole meal, we have 37. That's 37 different plants in just one dish. And that doesn't even include the coleslaw that I'm serving it with, which will add more. So if you're going for just trying to get 30 a week, you get 37 in this bad boy all by itself. Once the water's boiling, I'm going to put 3 of these sheets in there because that's what fits in my pan. Now I'm not using a lasagna pan because I don't have a lasagna pan. While you've got your noodles in, it's good to preheat your oven to 425 because once you have all the layers done, you're going to cover it with foil before you put it in. And then after 40 minutes, you'll take it out, take the foil off, and then put it back in uncovered for another 20 minutes. That's the recommendation if you don't parboil. Typically, for me, since I do, it only takes about 45 minutes total with the foil on, and then I just let it sit on the stove for a few minutes to cool down, and I don't have to put it back in for another 20. When you put them down, you want to make sure you push them in the sauce as much as possible so that they are not going to get crunchy, because that would be bad. And then once I put those down, I'm actually going to put 3 more in the water, that those can be boiling while I'm layering. So once you put the noodles down, you want to do a layer of sauce. And then you're going to go with the ricotta. And this is typically 3 or 4 layers, so just make sure you have enough for each. I usually do 3 layers because that's really all I can get in this pan. And I usually just use a spoon to move it around a little bit so it's a little more even. You could use a spatula if you like that better. Whatever works for you. I just don't like doing a million dishes, so I try to use what I have. And then if you are choosing to add any vegetables or fake meat, this is when you do that. Next comes the cheese. I like the Italian blend. Personally, I've tried a few different ones, and this one seems to have a really good flavor profile and melts really well for a vegan cheese. And now I'm ready for the next layer of noodles. That's the end of that. And then I'm gonna put some of this Parmesan on top. And then I'm gonna pop this in the oven. And I'm gonna set my timer for 45 minutes. Now I have time to wash dishes. Yay! So it's been 45 minutes and I just pulled it out. I'm gonna take the foil off so we can see what we've got. Ooh-wee! Oh, look at that. So this is what we've got going on. It looks really good. So I'm gonna let it sit about 10 minutes while I make the coleslaw and get plates ready, and then we'll serve it up and see how it tastes. So I let it cool for about 10 or so minutes while I was making the coleslaw, which is the quick and easy coleslaw I posted a video on a little while ago. So if you're not sure, check that one out. And this is what it looks like. It does not look as pretty as it does once I put it in the fridge and it cools, because it's still really hot, so it comes out like this. But I'm very excited to try it. So adding the coleslaw to the lasagna adds an extra 11 different plants. So now the whole meal is at 48 different plants, which is definitely more than the suggestion for the week. And this is just one meal. So even if you can't incorporate all of this, this is a good way to get extra plants into your weekly allowance, if you will, if you're trying to get more fiber and more plant diversity into your diet. So I'd love to know what your thoughts are, and if you have any questions, or if you want to try and make it and change it up a little bit, I'd love to hear what you do. But this is dinner tonight.